So today's the 5th day of Adar, the 5th day of March, and we're marching on from 770. So we're in chapter 1, page 152, and Derech Mitzvosecha, Mitzvos Korban Pesach. So we started saying the mashal for what igulim and yosher are in the person's psyche. So to understand this, he says, first of all, the soul is one, and then when it encloses in self, it engarbs itself in the body, then particular faculties of the soul begin to come out. But all these faculties, now we'll see something about them. Yeah.
The soul is one.
Yeah.
So you've got
unified.
So you've got Zohar and Zohar, most people have.
Right.
What's that got to do with the soul being one? That's not part of the soul?
It's also.
That's not a splitting of the
it's
soul
also.
into two?
Yeah, but in the soul, they're one. They're like Yaakov and Esav inside Rivka's womb.
But they fight.
In the soul, they don't fight so much.
So when do they start to fight?
The moment they go into the body.
When the Neshama goes into the body.
Okay. But also you have to say that the Yetzer Hara that you're talking about, the one that's really fighting with you, that's not from the soul. That's from the body. Okay. That's a higher function of the body itself. Okay.
Higher or lower?
It's a higher function. Because the body by itself
But Where is that? In the heart?
Where is that? It's from the body. A nefesh hi adam. Is it? In the Tanya it says it's in the heart, but instead we know it's not physically in the heart. That's where that's where it seems to originate from, in the mind. ואחר כך נמשך ומתפשט החיות מן הראש לכל הגוף, ושם מתחלקים הכוחות בהתחלקות פרטית יותר. So yesterday we saw that the intellectual faculties they're the first ones to receive separate vessels. We said these are the chambers in the head, and there's a lot of complexity in them, by the way. He just gives a very, very cursory examination. He says there's 3 chambers, 2 in the front, 1 in the back, one's behind the shoulders, 2 in the front, before the shoulders. Oh, we didn't finish that part about the kutfot, about the ephod. So the basic idea is that the katif, the shoulders, are the transition from behind and front. From your, you know how to say it in medicine. How do you say the
front brain and back brain?
Yeah, but how do you say the anterior and posterior, okay. Right? So between the anterior part of the body and the posterior, what's the big difference between them? That in the anterior part of the body, the back side of the body, there's no definition. You look at the person's backside, everything's the same. You look at the front side, now you see definition. There's eyes and ears and there's a face. And even all the reproductive organs, everything's in the front. In the front you see all the distinguishing features of the person. So what this basically means is that posterior means putting something, that's why we say, put it in the back of my mind. The back is always somewhere where you put stuff to forget it. And it sort of it melts into the general stuff of life. You don't have... Milay, okay. But the anterior, the front side, that's where you put stuff to have it in consciousness. So says Hashem, on these 2 stones, write the names of the tribes so that I may remember them. He says this twice. They're called Avnei Zikaron, they're called stones of memory, and they're also called Leman Yezichron Bnei Yisrael Lefanai. So that I have the memory of what's memory got to do with? Memory is these two stones. Basically, memory is the border between the posterior and the anterior, between what's in the back and what's in the front.
Where's the Shem?
The Shem is the same thing. Ktefayim. Why is it also Shem? Why is it? Okay, those are good questions that I don't remember the answer to right now. But I can tell you that katif actually comes from the word kaf. Okay? Katif is the taf there is an addition. It really comes from the word kaf. So there's the kaf, which is the beginning of the kaf. The beginning of kaf means the palm, the hand. The beginning is here, and what we mean to say, and I'll say this actually in a moment, is that from here, from this place and outwards, there begins to be a differentiation that we will call the conscious differentiation. But behind this, it's already gone. It melts into the general idea. And the stones, by the way, we said there's 6 on one side and 6 on the other. So on the choshen, on the breastplate, each one had separate stones. And so each one had a separate stone. They're completely distinguished. When you get to the border between them, it's half and half. Their names are there, but they're 6 and 6. They're melted already. They're a little melted. Also, there's another point that these 2 stones were shoham. Shoham, I don't remember what it is. Are you sure? I thought it was opal or something. Anyway, so that is the same stone as Yosef's stone on the choshen.
Shoham?
Yeah. Shoham is Moshe. The same, Moshe and Yosef, they're very much connected. Moshe is Tiferet and Yosef is Yisod. Gufa bebrita chad chashbinan, we consider them as one. So, why Yosef? Why these 2 stones would be out of Yosef? Because Yosef has a special status among the tribes, and he is the Shechem. There's that connection. He's special because Yosef is considered to be from the world of emanation. He's higher up. The higher you go, the more difficult in some ways it is to distinguish. Meaning Yosef, when he raises the actions of his brothers to a higher level, he doesn't distinguish so much between them anymore. They look more like but the lower down you go and you see the actions themselves, that's
differentiation.
There's more differentiation. In any case, so
He calls it onyx.
Onyx. Or I remember there was an O, but I don't remember which one. Okay.
So this is why Kodesh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, you can only see the behind and not
Right, exactly. That you can only see the general idea. But to see the particular why I do each thing that I do, like on the choshen, for that you need the choshen. you need me to talk to you in a different way. But if you see, just your observation is always going to be after the fact and only in a general sense. You won't be able to fully distinguish the hashgacha. Another way of saying it is you're going to see hashgacha klalit. Seeing general is klali, is the iskaludus, how everything is one. But seeing the front is seeing hashgacha pratit. By the way, the Rambam, he says that the difference is the more you're a tzaddik, the more you see the front, the more anterior you are. The less a tzaddik you are, the more posterior. It doesn't mean to say that there's... Everybody reads it, but I think it's a mistake in reading, really. I read it again 2 Shabbases ago. Does he say in the Moreh Nevuchim that if you are not a tzaddik, there is less hashgacha on you? No, he says the same amount of hashgacha, it's just not pratit. It's not individual. You don't see it as an individual hashgacha. What does that mean? You see it in general. You see how in general it's as mashgiach and everything, but you see hashgacha. It's not like you feel that you're thrown out and you're in the open sea and there's nobody watching over you. You feel completely, but you can't understand fully what it is that Hashem wants from you. That's what hashgacha pratit is. Hashgacha pratit means that I know exactly what Hashem wanted from me here. Hashgacha klalit is I know that he wanted to save me and he did it through this person and that person. We're all tied together and so on and so forth. And that's the general feeling. In any case.
We said it's da'at.
Right, da'at is in there.
Right. But from there actually doing
right.
the separation of the...
Right, exactly from there the differentiation begins. Which is very interesting because again, he just said this. He said the frontal lobe or the frontal chambers, let's not call it lobes because I don't know if it's the right definition, but in physiology, but the front chambers, he says, that's where Chachma and Bina are. And the back chamber, he says, that's where Da'at is. And if it's in the back, what does that imply? It implies that it's general. So how would we say it? We would say it very simply. That what we call it you probably know what it's called. I never remember what it's called. It's not the cerebellum.
Amygdala.
The amygdala is already animalistic. It's like inside. But it's the autonomous nervous system. The autonomous nervous system is something that you want it to work, but you don't want to get into details. If you have to get into details, it's not working. The whole point, again, this is not to say that this is worse than this. It's to say it serves a different function. So the function that it needs to serve is that it needs to work by itself. That's why I said before, that the real root of all this is nature and human. That when the autonomous nervous system, you want it to function by itself. You don't want to be involved. If you have to start getting involved, it means it's not working well. So the whole point is that I don't need to know about it. It's on the back burner anyway. So that's where the dot starts. And he says even B'dat Chadarim Mimelo, he hasn't talked yet about feelings, emotions. He's not talking about that. We know that Dat Chadarim Mimelo Cheder is Chesed Din Rachamim. That's already how out of Dat Maftacha de Kalil Shit. It's the key that opens 6 locks, the 6 chambers of the heart. It opens that also. We said, okay, that's also true. But it's much more complex than that. I thought in the Zohar, it seems like there's 32 chambers in Dat. And it's connected to the 32 pathways of wisdom. It's all very, very complex there. But leaving that for a moment, just if I would have to give a modern physical equivalent, that would be the autonomous nervous system. And he's going to say it now in a moment. He's going to use that type of mashal. So we'll see it in a second. ואחר כך נמשך ומתפשט אחריות מן הראש לכל הגוף, ושם מתחלקים הכוחות בהתחלקות פרטית יותר. דהיינו, כוח המעשה מתלבש בידיים וכוח ההילוך ברגליים. Then the vitality extends from the head to the entire body, where the faculties are further divided into more specific parts. That is, for example, the faculty of action is clothed in the hands, and the faculty of movement is clothed in the legs. So these are faculties. Movement is definitely, it's what we share with all the animals. And action, maaseh, you could say that this is more specific to man. But there's also some animals that also use their hands for action. But he says, she'av bekoach ha'maaseh shkama madrigot. But still, even though we call it movement and when we call action, they're both types of action. They're both part of the action. And there's, within the faculty of action, there are different levels. Even though we generally call the faculty clothed in the hands and the legs the faculty of action, there's a tremendous distinction between the faculty of action in the hands and the faculty of action in the legs. או לכתוב איזה כתב המלובש בו דבר חוכמה, והיד כותבת דבר החוכמה היא. מוכרח להיות שמלובש בה אז כוח החוכמה והשכל שלו, איך יצייר הציור ויכתוב הכתב. So with the hands, one can create a beautiful drawing, or write some writing that expresses wisdom. And since the hand writes that wisdom, it must be that the wisdom is and the intellect are clothed in it. Right. So what did they do? They extended the power of maaseh, of action at the level of the hands down into the legs. Right? So what do we mean? What does he mean that there's wisdom in the hand when if I write something very smart, I write an equation. Does that mean my hand knows mathematics? So obviously he doesn't mean that. What does he mean though? He means that there must be what's called itlabshut derech ma'avar. There's 2 types of enclothement in Chasidus that we talk about. There's enclothement where there is an effect that is pronounced, that is felt on the vessel, and there's an enclothement where there is no effect like that. It just passes through. So if you're talking, let's say, about playing, so this would be the difference between let's say, music and writing wisdom. It's interesting that he doesn't give music as an example. When a person plays the piano, is there wisdom of music in the hands? You have to say that there is. At some level there is. Because people feel it. Now, I don't know exactly how to describe it, because I haven't played a musical instrument to that level. But even at the levels that I played, at some point you feel the music in your hands. At some point you begin to feel it there. It's not just in your mind. It's also there. So it's pronounced. There's a feedback loop. There's some kind of feedback. And you know that you played something wrong even without hearing it. The biggest composers didn't compose with a musical instrument. They composed entirely in their hands, and it's as if they had a musical instrument. They could compose on a keyboard that was a piece of cardboard that was just had pictures of the keys. And they felt it. It gave them the feedback that they needed. So there is some wisdom there. And when you think about something like playing football for you English people, soccer for us Americans, so there's definitely wisdom in the feet. There's no question that there's wisdom in the feet. Because the mind doesn't even know how to do what the feet... It can't tell the feet to do this. And what he's saying really is that at some level this is true even in wisdom. That there's some... So it's not pronounced, you can't feel it, but there's an effect on it. So when you think about the modern person, I think would feel this in touch typing. That you begin to feel that even though you're thinking with your head, there is something going on with your fingers.
You should be able to tell that.
I type very fast, and I don't think. It's the same thing, like if I would be bold enough to say, he doesn't bring these examples, and I don't remember if they're brought anywhere, but I've heard the Rav speak about them. When you speak, and I'm saying stuff now, so would someone say that in my mouth is what I'm saying? It's going from my mind, but my experience is not that I'm thinking with my head. My experience is that my mouth is saying these things. So that's not b'derech ma'avar, that's b'derech hitlapshut. There's an enclothement already. Okay, so that's a different type. But in the faculty of action of the legs, the intellect is not clothed in the same way. It is a simple act to walk or stand. Why is it so? Why are there levels and types of enclothement and so on? Because the 10 sfirot are found in action itself. 10 sfirot are everywhere. So if you take the faculty of action, it too is divided into 10 sfirot. So what if it's divided into 10? And these are the different levels found within the faculty of action itself. So we'll have the muskal, murugash, mutba of action. The intellectual, muskal is the intellectual, let's call it. Murugash is the experienced. There we'd have to say already that there is some feedback, there's some feeling of something happening. And then there's a mutba, and then there is what has become habitual. So the action had an intellect. It had an intellect, but the intellect is in the brain. It remains always in the brain. The habitual, let's say again, when I'm typing, which is the closest thing to that word, when we speak, the wisdom of action, or in this case, the wisdom of expression in the mouth, is now come down into its nehim, into its netzachot yesod malchut, into its habitual faculties, the habitual faculties of the speaking, of the thought, or of the action, or whatever it is. So and each vessel in the body can be, to one degree or another, able to contain one of these levels. And like you said, there's people in China, why in China I don't know, because I guess it's a big deal for them, who will show you that they know how to draw beautiful paintings with their feet. This especially happens when someone doesn't have hands, and they have no other choice. But in China they do it anyway, even if they have hands. Why? Because it's a curiosity, it's interesting.
It's not a bit like fractals, like the whole idea.
Right, fractals. It's a fractal. That's what we call inter-inclusion. Okay. So we'll continue tomorrow. So we're here. V'aynu mipnei shenimtza. Okay. No, this is the places. This is the establishments.